She mocked me for being too soft, said she needed someone more of a man. I didn't argue. I just waited. Months later, a casual DNA test for our baby turned into something much bigger, something she begged me not to share. But if I'm not man enough to father the child, why protect the lie? We were engaged for a year and together for 3. She always had a sharp tongue, and I chalked it up to stress, independence, or whatever excuse helped me stay quiet. I thought I was being mature, supportive, choosing peace over ego. But that peace cost me piece by piece. Her remarks got personal, especially around others. Jabs at my sensitivity, passive-aggressive praise for real men, weird flirty jokes with her gym friend. I didn't confront. I internalized. And I thought if I just held on, maybe marriage would settle her down. But there's a tipping point where silence stops being noble and starts looking like weakness. What pushed me past that point wasn't the cheating. It wasn't even the baby. It was the moment I realized she counted on my silence and thought she could shame me into staying quiet forever. It was her friend's birthday, small group, wine bar, mostly couples. Everyone was doing the usual, mild gossip, shared stories, social performance. I was used to being background noise at these things. I'd mastered the art of smiling, nodding, letting her interrupt me mid-sentence to add a punchline that somehow put me in the soft, clueless boyfriend role. But that night stuck. Her friend was talking about some Tinder guy who ghosted her, and someone joked that sweet guys are extinct. Without hesitation, my fiancé laughed and said, "Oh, I know. Mine's sweet. Not exactly manly, though." They laughed. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was the script. If I protested, I'd be sensitive. If I went quiet, I'd be pouting. So I chuckled, looked around, and tried to find something on the menu to stare at. She didn't even register it. Didn't notice the way my shoulders dropped slightly. Didn't catch the shift in tone when I started speaking again. Later that night, I laid beside her in bed and tried to convince myself I was being dramatic, that she meant it as a joke, that it wasn't about gender or attraction, just a badly timed comment. But the truth sat with me. She didn't say it to tease me. She said it because she believed it. And more importantly, she said it because it cost her nothing to say. I was the safe one, the one who wouldn't react. The joke she could toss around without consequence. And that realization, not the insult itself, but the ease with which she used me as a punchline, cracked something. Not enough to end things. Not yet, but enough to start paying closer attention. I waited a few days before bringing it up. Not because I was afraid of confrontation. I just wanted to give myself time to decide whether it was worth it. Whether it was just one of those moments you brush off to keep the peace. But it kept replaying in my head. The way she laughed. The look on her friends' faces. The way I'd laughed along with them like I was in on the joke. So one night while we were cleaning up after dinner, I mentioned it. Light tone, careful phrasing. I said, "Hey, that thing you said the other night. About me being sweet, not manly, it kind of stuck with me." She didn't miss a beat. Just rolled her eyes and said, "Oh my God, you're so sensitive." It was a joke. She added, "You always say you want honesty, right? That's me being honest." Then she pivoted to, "At least I don't pretend like other people. I'm real." It wasn't anger. It wasn't even defensive. It was pure dismissal. Like I was boring her by being hurt. Like my discomfort was some kind of emotional inconvenience. And I did what I always did. I let it drop. I told myself maybe she didn't mean it like it sounded. That maybe I was being too sensitive. That's how these things work. You start rewriting the insult just to make it easier to stay. But something in me was shifting. I didn't fully trust her anymore. Not with my feelings. Not with her version of truth. I noticed how quickly she flipped the script. How easily I was made to feel guilty for bringing it up. And this time, it didn't fully work. Part of me logged it. I didn't argue. I didn't fight. But I didn't forget. I found myself listening more carefully to how she spoke to me. And how she spoke about me. There was always a performance in her words. Around others, she'd toss compliments with a smirk. "He's the responsible one," she'd say, then laugh in a way that made it sound like a burden. "He's the sweet one," she'd say, right after mentioning someone else's ambition or physicality. And slowly, I started to understand. I wasn't her partner. I was her contrast. Every trait of mine she didn't like, she framed as lack. Every kindness became softness. Every compromise became weakness. And when I tried to voice that discomfort, I was told I should be grateful she wasn't fake. It wasn't rage that I felt. Not yet. Just a kind of cold awareness. That I was being reshaped. softened down into something she could step over. Still useful, still present, but increasingly invisible. She always had a way of knowing when I'd pulled back emotionally. Not enough to call it distance, but enough that my responses felt colder. It's like she had a sixth sense for my silence and knew exactly when to patch things up. Not with accountability, with sweetness. That week, after the compliment argument, she got unusually affectionate. I came home from work and found candles lit. She'd cooked, music playing low, the kind of setting that looked like connection but felt like control. We ate on the couch, legs touching. She told me I was her rock, that no one made her feel safe the way I did, that I always knew how to steady her chaos. It felt good, I won't lie. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that all the tension from earlier was just noise. That deep down, we had something solid. Then came the ask. Her car was acting up again. She didn't have time to deal with it. And money was tight, just until her next freelance payment cleared. Could I help? Just this once, she added, like I hadn't already helped 4 times before. Because you're the responsible one. There it was. The hook inside the praise. The transaction embedded in the affection. That was the rhythm of our relationship. Push, pull, reward. Every time she bruised my self-esteem, she followed it with comfort. If I proved I could still be useful. Emotional support was currency, and I was always the one paying. I covered the bill. I always did. But something in my stomach turned when I transferred the money. It wasn't about the amount. It was about what I was being asked to ignore in order to stay the good one. I realized she didn't love me despite my sensitivity and patience. She loved me for those things, because they made me easy to guilt, easy to manage, easy to turn into a mirror that only reflected her in a flattering light. The more I gave, the more invisible I became. And afterward, when I sat on the edge of the bed while she showered, I noticed how quiet I'd become inside my own life. Like I'd pressed mute on the parts of myself that felt awkward or angry or hurt, just to make sure she didn't feel uncomfortable. I wasn't a man to her. I was a buffer, a fixer, a container for her worst moods, and a wallet when things broke down. And when she came out of the bathroom, kissed my cheek, and called me her favorite person, all I could think was, favorites are easy to replace. She had a habit of name-dropping certain people when she was trying to get a rise out of me. It was never obvious, just casual mentions in the middle of some unrelated story. Her gym friend, for example. Let's call him Evan. He started popping up more often, not in alarming ways, at first, just enough for me to notice patterns. One afternoon, we were folding laundry and she said, "Evan asked what you do for work." I didn't even know how to explain it. Then she laughed, like it was cute. But it wasn't. It was one of those small sentences that carry too much weight. Because she used to tell everyone how proud she was that I had a stable career, that I didn't chase clout or post motivational quotes like the guy she dated before. Now suddenly, she couldn't describe what I did. I didn't say anything, just nodded. But I remembered. A few days later, I went down a rabbit hole, not to snoop, but to connect dots. I remembered her saying she'd met Evan at her new gym this year. But when I scrolled far enough back in her tagged photos, I found one from nearly 2 years ago. A group selfie. He was there, right behind her, holding a drink with his pinky out like he was mocking someone off camera. It wasn't just the lie about when they met. It was how easy it was for her to forget the lie. Or maybe she didn't forget. Maybe she thought I wouldn't look that far. Wouldn't care enough to question anything. That was the shift. I realized how little effort she made to keep her story straight. Not because she was careless, but because she was confident I wouldn't call her out. That night, I started noticing more. How she lit up when she talked about her workouts. How she downplayed how much time she spent there. Once, she said Evan gave her a ride home because it was raining, but her hair had been bone dry. Still, I said nothing. I just filed each inconsistency in a quiet little drawer in my head. I wasn't looking for evidence. I was measuring disrespect, not in grand betrayals, but in how little she valued my perception of her. What unsettled me wasn't Evan. It was how quickly she'd shifted me from someone she admired to someone she had to justify. I wasn't being cheated on. Not yet. But I was already being replaced in the narrative she told herself. Rewritten as too soft, too boring, too responsible. The kind of guy you settle for until someone shows you how much fun you could be having. And once again, I stayed quiet. But this time, it wasn't out of fear. It was because I wanted to see how far she'd go before realizing I was watching. It's strange how moments you barely noticed at the time can start to glow under hindsight. Not brightly, just enough to make you squint. And once you do, you can't unsee them. Her baby shower had been a blur. Loud. Pink. Overplanned. I remember smiling a lot, shaking hands with relatives I'd never met, thanking people for gifts I didn't pick out. She was in her element, surrounded, adored, complimented. I stood next to her, hands in pockets, trying not to get in the way. There was a moment, so small I nearly forgot it, when her mom introduced me to a couple of distant cousins. She hesitated, just for a second, like she didn't know what title to use. "This is him," she said, then laughed and added my name. I'd assumed she was just flustered, overwhelmed with hosting duties. But now I hear it differently. That pause, that glance between her and the cousin. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was doubt, or distance, or guilt. Later, someone asked, "Wait, that's the dad?" I didn't even flinch, just smiled and nodded, said something polite. But now, that question replays with new weight. That's the dad, like they'd been expecting someone else. Her friend Amanda, the one who always posted filtered selfies and gave unsolicited advice, made a comment about how strong genes run in the gym crowd. It had no context, no clear target, and I laughed it off. But even then, the timing felt off. I was standing 3 feet away. And then there was the photo, the big group one with the cake and the balloons, and her cradling her stomach like a catalog model. I remember standing beside her, but somehow, not in the center. Cropped just enough to seem peripheral. Even now, when I look at that photo, I'm not sure I belong in it. At the time, I didn't let any of that stick. I'd trained myself to filter out slights, to interpret discomfort as miscommunication. But now, with everything I've learned since, I replay that day with a different lens. Her mother's distance. Amanda's weird comment. The cousin's confusion. The laugh that followed. All of it a murmur in the background that I'd been too trusting or too numb to hear. The signs weren't neon. They were casual, dismissible. But that's how betrayal works when it hides behind politeness. It doesn't crash in. It drips. Slowly. Quietly. Until one day you look around and realize you're drenched. That baby shower wasn't just a celebration. It was a silent vote, one I didn't know I was losing. It started as a joke, or at least that's how she framed it. One evening, she waved a small box in front of me like it was a surprise party. One of those at-home DNA kits, ancestry, heritage, all that. She said it'd be cute to do as a couple. "Let's see what makes us us," she said with that performative grin she used when she wanted something to look spontaneous. I played along. Of course I did. She'd already done her own sample and swabbed our daughter's cheek, all packaged and ready to mail. All she needed was mine. I remember thinking it was a little weird how excited she was about mailing it out. Not because she was curious, but because she was urgent. I chalked it up to hormones, or boredom, or one of those quirky ideas she got from social media. That was always her defense. I saw it on TikTok, and I let that be enough. Weeks passed. The results arrived in her email. She opened them on her laptop while I was making coffee. I remember her expression shifting, fast, but not loud. She stared at the screen for a full 10 seconds, then shut the lid. Said nothing. Just asked what I wanted for dinner that night. That was the first clue. Later that night, when she went to shower, I checked the email account on the shared computer. Nothing out of line in the inbox. But in the trash, I found the report. It wasn't complicated. It was missing something. Specifically, it was missing me. There was a comparison chart. Child versus mother, child versus father. Except the father slot was blank. The system couldn't confirm a genetic match between me and the baby. There was a polite disclaimer about lab errors and the option to retest. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes. Not angry, not sad, just still. And then I ordered another kit. Quietly, shipped to my office. When it arrived, I swabbed my cheek, my daughter's, again, and sent it back. 2 weeks later, I got the same result. 0 match. That night, I sat across from her at dinner and asked about her day. She said she was stressed about planning the honeymoon. I nodded. She asked if I could help split the deposit for the wedding photographer. I said sure. She didn't know what I knew. Not yet. But her body did. I saw it in the stiffness of her shoulders, the way she avoided looking at our daughter when she cried, the way she grabbed the wine bottle too fast when I offered to pour. She was unraveling, quietly, and I wasn't ready to confront her. Not because I was afraid of the answer. I already had that. I just wanted to see how long she'd keep lying while looking me in the eye. I didn't tell anyone. Not at first. Not because I was protecting her, but because I was testing something, a kind of social experiment in silence. I wanted to see if anyone else already knew. If the truth had been quietly circulating while I walked around like an idiot holding invisible balloons. It didn't take long. Her sister called me out of the blue. We weren't particularly close. She always struck me as one of those people who weaponize kindness. The type who uses checking in as a way of managing narratives. She asked if I was okay. No context. Just, everything good with you lately? And it wasn't the question itself. It was the timing. The way she asked it like she already knew the answer, like she was giving me a soft exit ramp to avoid a crash. I told her everything was fine. That seemed to disappoint her. Later that week, we had dinner with her family. Just the usual. Pasta, wine, too many passive-aggressive jokes tossed like confetti. Except this time, she was different. Clingy. She sat close to me, touched my arm when I wasn't talking, laughed too loudly at anything I said, even the things that weren't funny. Her affection was suddenly performative, like she was auditioning for a role she'd neglected for too long. Her dad made a comment halfway through the meal about how strong genes run in our family, nodding at our daughter, who was sitting in his lap. It was meant as a compliment, but when he said it, her hand froze midair with a forkful of salad. She recovered fast, blinked, smiled, took a bite, but I saw it. That flicker of fear, not because of what he said, but because of what I might say in response. I stayed silent, stirred my drink, let the moment pass. No one else noticed. Or maybe they pretended not to. I was starting to understand how much effort people put into not noticing what makes them uncomfortable. And in this family, the only thing worse than a secret was the person who broke it. After dessert, she suggested we leave early. Said she was tired. That was new. Usually, she dragged her feet at goodbyes, needing every ounce of attention from every person in the room. But this time, she practically bolted. Once we got in the car, she was quiet the whole drive home. Not mad, not defensive, just hollow, like she was playing back every second of that dinner in her head, trying to figure out if the walls were closing in. They were. She just didn't know how fast. And I still hadn't said a word. Because the longer I said nothing, the more her guilt said everything. The thing about silence is that people think it's passive. They think it means surrender, retreat, defeat. But silence can also be surgical, controlled, a kind of quiet power that lets people expose themselves in high definition. I stopped reacting. Not dramatically, not with distance or cold shoulders. I just stopped giving her what she was used to. No more eager nods. No more reassuring smiles. No more playing along with the performance. When she made a half joke about how I was getting boring, I just looked at her. Not angry, not hurt, just present. And that scared her more than any outburst could have. She started trying harder, planning couple photos, booking brunch with her friends, the ones she used to mock me in front of. Suddenly she wanted to post us again, captioned with things like, through thick and thin. The same hands that once swatted me away for being too clingy were now wrapping themselves around my arm in every room we entered. I let her plan the wedding, pick the colors, tour the venue, talk about flower arrangements. I even let her add another tier to the cake design, since we might have a bigger guest list after all. She had no idea I'd already deleted the photographer's invoice from my inbox. Had no idea I'd stopped replying to the planner's emails. She was organizing a ceremony I no longer intended to attend. And that's when I realized how little she actually saw me. Not metaphorically, literally. She didn't notice my stillness. Didn't notice that I no longer responded to her jabs or complimented her outfits. She didn't even blink when I left the house early or came home late. As long as the image stayed intact, the reality didn't matter. And this time, I wasn't hurt by that. I was clear. She had built her world around the assumption that I would always hold the emotional weight, the apologies, the empathy, the compromise. But when I stopped, she had nothing to push against. No resistance meant no control, just free fall. That's when the cracks started showing. Her temper got shorter. Her phone habits got messier. Her questions turned loaded. Do you still want this? Are you sure about us? You seem different. I answered everyone with the same calm. Everything's fine. Because it was, for me. And that was the power shift. I no longer needed to be heard. I was just watching, listening, waiting. When you stop defending yourself, people start talking to fill the space. And in that space, the truth always leaks. I waited until I was absolutely sure I didn't care how she responded. That's the trick to clarity. You don't act when you're angry. You act when you're empty. It was a Tuesday. Nothing special. She had just left for a work meeting, texting me some meme about astrology. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open. The second DNA result pulled up on the screen. The third confirmation, really. The first test, the backup test, and now this formal lab analysis I'd paid extra for. All of them said the same thing: no paternal match. I took a screenshot. No captions. No highlighted text. No accusation. And I sent it to her. I didn't follow up. Didn't ask, did you see it? I just left it there, like a thread pulled halfway out of a sweater. I closed my laptop, made myself a sandwich, and went on with my day. She didn't call. Didn't show up. But 4 hours later, a message came through. Please don't tell anyone. Let's talk first. That was all it said. Not, I can explain. Not, this isn't what you think. Just, don't tell. That told me everything. I didn't respond. Instead, I drafted a short, polite email to her father. Subject line: a personal matter I'd appreciate your advice on. I didn't go into graphic detail. I just said I discovered something unexpected that affected our upcoming plans, and I felt it was right to bring it to someone she respected before I made any final decisions. He called me within 15 minutes. And then, after a long, quiet conversation, he called her. I don't know what was said. I don't want to. But the next morning, she didn't come home. I found a half-packed duffel bag missing from the closet, a note on the counter that just said, "Give me space." The irony was so thick I almost laughed. Give her space? I'd been giving her nothing but space. Emotional, mental, moral, and she'd filled it with lies. I sat down in the living room, stared at the blank TV screen, and felt nothing. No rage. No heartbreak. No cinematic collapse. Just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't echo, it settles. She texted again that night. You hate me, don't you? I didn't respond. Because hate still implies value. And at that point, she didn't hold any. What happened next wasn't mine to manage anymore. I'd stopped being the emotional janitor in her mess. Now it was her turn to clean up. She moved out 2 days later. No grand gestures, no confrontation. Just disappeared. A few drawers left half open, some hangers still swinging in the closet, like she'd rushed through the decision without really making one. She didn't say goodbye, didn't return the key, didn't ask about the lease. Her gym bag was gone, her framed photos were gone, but the wedding dress stayed behind, hanging in its opaque garment bag near the bedroom window. Like even she couldn't pretend anymore. Her family didn't call. Not with concern, not with anger. Just a strange silence, the kind that smells like guilt, but doesn't speak it out loud. Her dad sent a short follow-up email. Thanks for handling things with discretion. That was it. No judgment. No comfort. Just corporate-style neutrality, like I'd filed an HR complaint instead of being deceived by the woman I almost married. Her sister blocked me on everything, which was funny, considering I never even brought her up. I guess she was just eliminating witnesses to the collapse. The gym friend? Gone from her social media. Vanished like a glitch in the algorithm. No more tagged workouts. No more blurry mirror selfies. Either he ran the second the truth came out, or she erased him herself. Damage control. She sent one final message, exactly 6 days after I exposed her. I messed up. I know you'll hate me forever. I don't blame you. I stared at it for a full minute, then deleted it. Not out of spite, not to prove anything, but because I didn't need it. That message wasn't an apology. It wasn't accountability. It was another performance, a final audition for the role of the victim. One last attempt to make me feel something that might keep her relevant in my story. But she wasn't relevant anymore. What hurt me wasn't that she cheated. It wasn't that I almost raised someone else's child. It wasn't even that she lied about it. It was that she mocked me for not being man enough, while knowing full well that I was the only one acting like an adult. That every time she rolled her eyes at my softness, she was hiding from her own cowardice. That she banked on my silence and built a life around the assumption that I would never speak. Well, I didn't yell. I didn't shame her. I didn't post screenshots or dramatic status updates. I just left the truth where it belonged, in her hands. Heavy, inescapable, unforgettable. The wedding was canceled. The lease was transferred. The silence between us was final. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I had finally found the one thing more powerful than shouting back. Walking away. What does it say about someone who confuses silence with weakness? And what does it say about us when we let them?